"You're just an old burden." My daughter said, so I took back the house title. Then she came home to an empty driveway. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window as I scrambled eggs for breakfast, the same kitchen window I'd looked through for 37 years. The same countertop where I'd packed thousands of school lunches, helped with algebra homework that made my head spin, and celebrated my daughter Sarah's acceptance to law school with tears streaming down my face. Now, at 72, I was still here in this house, still cooking breakfast every morning, still hoping that the familiar rhythms of home might somehow soften what had grown so terribly hard between us. The house held every memory of raising her alone. The living room where she'd practiced piano recitals, stumbling through Mozart sonatas while I folded laundry and cheered her on. The dining room table where she'd spread law school applications, asking me to proofread her essays even though my high school education left me guessing at half the words. The front porch where I'd waited up countless nights during her teenage years, watching for headlights and praying she was safe. I'd bought this house in 1987 for $89,000, working double shifts as a hotel housekeeper and weekend shifts cleaning offices downtown. Every mortgage payment had been a battle, but I'd fought it gladly because Sarah deserved stability, deserved a home where she could grow up without the fear of eviction notices that had haunted my own childhood. I heard the front door slam with unnecessary force, followed by the sharp click of expensive heels on hardwood. Sarah's voice carried through the hallway, tight with the kind of frustration that meant this conversation had been rehearsed. "Mom, we need to talk." Right now, she appeared in the kitchen doorway with her husband Derek trailing behind, both of them wearing expressions I'd come to dread over the past few months. Sarah looked expensive now, Louis Vuitton handbag, perfectly styled blonde hair that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The kind of confident posture that comes from never having to choose between paying the electric bill or buying prescription medications. Derek hung back near the doorframe, already checking his phone, clearly wanting to be anywhere else but having this conversation with his wife's aging mother. "Sit down, Mom," Sarah said, though she remained standing herself, towering over me like a prosecutor addressing a defendant. I turned off the stove burner and faced them, wiping my hands on the same yellow dish rag I'd used for years. After 45 years of raising her alone, after working myself to exhaustion to pay for her private tutoring and college prep courses. After proudly signing over the deed to this house when she graduated law school 8 years ago, wanting to secure her future and show her how proud I was, I recognized that tone. It was the voice she used in courtrooms, not kitchens. Professional, cold, final. "We've made a decision about your living situation," she continued, pulling out a glossy brochure from her purse and placing it on the counter like evidence. "We've found you a beautiful assisted living facility, Sunset Manor. They have organized activities, professionally prepared meal plans, medical staff available 24 hours a day. It's absolutely perfect for someone your age." I picked up the brochure, staring at photos of elderly people playing bingo and smiling at cameras. "My age," I repeated slowly. "Sarah, I'm 72, not 92. I still drive myself to the grocery store, cook my own meals, maintain this garden, volunteer at the church." "That's exactly the problem," she interrupted, her voice rising with manufactured concern. "You're rattling around in this huge house all by yourself. What if you fall down the stairs? What if you have a medical emergency and no one finds you for days? Derek and I lie awake at night worrying constantly about your safety." I studied her face, searching for some trace of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who once told me I was braver than superheroes because I could kill spiders and make pancakes shaped like hearts. "I'm perfectly fine here, sweetheart. This is my home, these are my memories." Derek finally looked up from his phone, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, technically it's not your home anymore, remember? You signed the deed over to Sarah 8 years ago when she passed the bar exam." The words hit me like ice water poured down my spine. Sarah shot him a sharp warning look, but the damage was already done. Derek's absolutely right, Sarah said, her voice softening with fake gentleness while her eyes remained as cold as courtroom marble. Legally, this house belongs to us now. We've been letting you stay here out of kindness, out of love, but Mom, she paused, choosing her words carefully. You're becoming a burden. I hate to say it so bluntly, but there it is. A burden. The word echoed in the suddenly silent kitchen like a gunshot. I felt something crack deep inside my chest, not my heart exactly, but something more fundamental. The foundation of everything I'd believed about my relationship with my daughter, the woman I'd sacrificed everything to raise. A burden, I whispered, setting down the dish towel with trembling fingers. It's not personal, Mom, it's practical. Sarah's lawyer voice was in full control now. You're getting older and this house is getting more expensive to maintain. The property taxes alone are killing us. The roof needs work, the furnace is ancient, and don't get me started on what it's going to cost to update the electrical system to modern standards. Derek nodded eagerly, finally finding his courage now that Sarah had opened the door. We've run the numbers, Mrs. Patterson. Between property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance, this house costs us nearly $3,000 a month just to keep running. Sunset Manor would only cost $4,000 monthly, and that includes all your meals, activities, and medical care. Only $4,000, I repeated numbly. It's actually a bargain when you consider everything that's included, Sarah continued, warming to her argument. Plus, you'd have people your own age to socialize with, you'd make friends, stay active, have proper supervision. Supervision, the word came out sharper than I intended. Sarah exchanged a quick glance with Derek. I meant support, professional support. Mom, we love you, but we're not qualified to take care of an aging parent. What if your health declines? What if you develop dementia or need physical assistance? We can't be here 24 hours a day. I looked around my kitchen, seeing it suddenly through their eyes. The dated appliances I'd been too proud to ask them to replace. The linoleum floor that showed every scuff mark. The handmade curtains I'd sewn 30 years ago that now looked shabby compared to Sarah's designer home. When would this happen? I asked quietly. Well, that's the thing, Derek said, consulting his phone calendar. We've already put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. They have an opening next month, which is actually amazing because their waiting list is usually years long. Next month? My voice cracked. Mom, we know it seems fast, but we've been discussing this for months. We should have included you in the conversation earlier, but we wanted to have all the arrangements in place first. We thought it would be less stressful for you if everything was already organized. I stared at them both, these two people who had made major life decisions about my future without consulting me, who had already spent money on my behalf. Who had spoken about me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be respected. That night, long after they'd gone back to their condo downtown, I sat in my bedroom surrounded by boxes of memories I'd been meaning to organize. Photo albums from Sarah's childhood, report cards where her teachers had written glowing comments about her intelligence and potential, birthday cards she'd made me in elementary school with crayon hearts and crooked letters spelling "I love you, Mommy" in purple marker. How had that earnest little girl grown into someone who could call her mother a burden with such casual cruelty? I couldn't sleep. The digital clock glowed 11:47 p.m. when I finally gave up and crept down the hallway to get some warm milk. That's when I heard Sarah's voice drifting from the guest bedroom where they'd decided to spend the night. She was on a phone call and her tone was nothing like the concerned daughter act she'd performed in my kitchen. I know it sounds harsh, David, but she's not going to live forever, she was saying, her voice low but carrying clearly in the silent house. The house will be worth at least $800,000 in today's market, maybe more if we renovate the kitchen and bathrooms first. My blood turned to ice as I pressed my back against the hallway wall. No, we can't wait much longer, Sarah continued, and I could hear her pacing across the creaky floorboards of my guest room. She's 72 and stubborn as hell. If we don't move her to assisted living now, she could easily live here another 10 or 15 years. Do you have any idea how much money that represents in lost opportunity? Property taxes alone are $18,000 annually, plus maintenance, utilities, insurance. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from gasping audibly. She was talking to David Brennan, her law partner, the one who'd helped her set up her practice. I recognized his voice now, tinny through the phone speaker. The facility costs $4,000 a month, but that's still significantly cheaper than maintaining this house, Sarah said. Plus, once she's settled there and comfortable, we can put the house on the market immediately. I've already had 3 realtors give me informal estimates. The neighborhood has gentrified tremendously since she bought it in the 80s. Derek's muffled voice joined the conversation from across the room. What about the guilt factor? I feel like we're being pretty cold about this. Sarah's laugh was sharp and calculating. Derek, this is business. Pure and simple. Mom made her choice when she signed that deed 8 years ago. She wanted to help secure our future, and now we're securing it. She'll never know the difference between us genuinely caring about her safety and us needing her out of this house. But what if she resists the move? Derek asked. She won't have a choice. Legally, we own this property now. If she refuses to leave voluntarily, we can initiate eviction proceedings. It sounds horrible, but we'd be within our rights. My legs nearly gave out. Eviction. They were discussing evicting me from the home I'd worked 2 jobs for 20 years to pay off, the home I'd given them as a gift to celebrate Sarah's success. The timing is actually perfect, Sarah continued. I've got 3 major cases settling next month, and we'll need the capital injection from selling this place to cover the office expansion. Plus, Derek's construction business is finally turning around, and we could use this house as collateral for the equipment loan. I crept back to my bedroom on unsteady legs, my heart hammering so hard I worried they might hear it through the walls. They weren't trying to protect me from falls or medical emergencies. They were trying to liquidate me like an asset so they could fund their business ventures. But as I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling where water stains from last winter's roof leak made strange patterns in the moonlight, a memory began surfacing. Something about that deed signing 8 years ago, something Sarah's lawyer had mentioned that I'd been too overwhelmed with pride and excitement to fully understand at the time. There had been papers, lots of papers, and Sarah had rushed me through the signing process. Just paperwork, Mom, to make sure everything goes smoothly later, she'd said. But there had been something specific the lawyer had mentioned about timing, about when the transfer would actually take effect. I needed to make some phone calls. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I had signed 8 years ago. The next morning, I waited until Sarah and Derek left for their respective offices before driving my old Toyota to the county courthouse. My hands shook as I parked between 2 gleaming SUVs, feeling like an imposter in my thrift store cardigan and sensible shoes. The property records office was staffed by a kind young woman named Jennifer who looked at me with genuine concern when I explained what I needed. "Let me pull those records for you," she said, typing rapidly into her computer. 1247 Maple Street, here we go." She printed several documents and handed them across the counter. I stared at the papers, reading them once, twice, then a third time as understanding began to dawn. My heart started racing, but not from fear this time, from something that felt dangerously like hope. "Ma'am," Jennifer leaned forward, "is everything all right? You look a little pale." "I thought I had transferred ownership of my house to my daughter 8 years ago," I said slowly. She looked at the documents with me, pointing to a specific section with her pen. "According to this, you signed what's called a transfer on death deed, also known as a TOD deed. See this language right here? The property remains in your name and under your complete control until you pass away. Only then does it automatically transfer to the named beneficiary." I stared at the legal language that had seemed like meaningless jargon 8 years ago but now read like a revelation. "So I still own my house?" "Absolutely. You're not just living there by your daughter's grace, you're the legal owner. You can sell it, mortgage it, or even revoke this deed entirely if you choose to." "Can this transfer on death deed be changed?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely, the grantor that's you can revoke or modify a TOD deed at any time while they're living. You just need to file the proper paperwork with the county recorder's office. Some people change beneficiaries, others revoke the deed entirely. It's completely up to you. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling with possibilities. Sarah thought she owned my house, had been making financial plans based on that assumption, had even told creditors she was about to inherit property. But she was wrong, dead wrong. And suddenly, all those years of watching legal dramas on television were about to pay off in ways I'd never imagined. That afternoon, I made a series of phone calls that would have made Sarah proud of my organizational skills. First, I contacted 3 different real estate agents and had them provide written appraisals of my property. Sarah had underestimated the house's value significantly in today's market. It was worth $1.2 million, not the $800,000 she'd mentioned to her law partner. Next, I called my bank to understand my financial options. The mortgage had been paid off 15 years ago, which meant I had substantial equity to work with. I could take out a reverse mortgage if needed or a traditional home equity loan, but something told me I wouldn't need to borrow money for what I was planning. The most important call was to Marcus Webb, a retired police detective who now worked as a private investigator specializing in financial fraud cases. His advertisement in the Yellow Pages had caught my eye, uncovering the truth when family becomes complicated. We met the next day at a coffee shop across town, far from any place Sarah or Derek might accidentally encounter us. Marcus was a tall, thin man in his 60s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd spent decades listening to people's worst stories. "Tell me what's happening," he said, pulling out a legal pad. I explained everything: the assisted living pressure, the overheard phone conversation, the deed situation I'd just discovered. Marcus took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions that showed he understood the implications immediately. "Mrs. Patterson, I've seen this pattern before. Adult children who pressure elderly parents into housing changes they don't want, especially when there's property involved. Let me do some digging into your daughter's financial situation. If she's making decisions based on inheriting your house, I need to understand what's motivating that urgency." 3 days later, Marcus called with information that knocked the breath out of my lungs. "Your daughter is in serious financial trouble," he said. "Can you meet me this afternoon? You need to see this documentation in person." We met at the same coffee shop. Marcus spread manila folders across the table like he was building a legal case, which in many ways he was. Derek's construction business didn't just struggle, it failed catastrophically 6 months ago, he began, opening the first folder. They owe $180,000 in credit card debt spread across 17 different cards. They have 2 mortgages on their downtown condo totaling $400,000, and the bank has already begun foreclosure proceedings. I stared at bank statements, credit reports, and court documents that painted a picture of financial desperation I never could have imagined. My successful lawyer daughter was drowning in debt. "But here's where it gets interesting," Marcus continued, opening a second folder. "Sarah has been telling creditors that she's expecting a significant property inheritance within the next 60 to 90 days. She's used your house as justification for loan extensions and payment deferrals. She told people I was dying," I whispered. "Worse than that. According to this documentation from her credit counseling service, she told them you were already in assisted living and the family home was going on the market immediately. She's been buying time with creditors for months using this story." Marcus opened a third folder. "There's more. The assisted living facility deposit, she borrowed against Derek's business equipment to pay it. The moving company she's contacted, she told them the move was urgent because of a family medical emergency, meaning you." I felt dizzy staring at the evidence of my daughter's lies. Every decision she'd presented as concern for my welfare was actually desperate self-preservation. "She's not just hoping you'll move out voluntarily," Marcus said gently. "Based on these financial pressures, she can't afford for you not to." If she doesn't get access to that house value soon, she and Derek are looking at bankruptcy. That evening, I sat in my garden among the roses I'd planted 30 years ago. Some had died over the decades, others had struggled through harsh winters and scorching summers, but the ones that survived were stronger and more beautiful than ever. Their roots had grown deep, their stems had grown thick, and they bloomed with a resilience that could only come from enduring every season life had offered. I realized I needed to find out what kind of rose I was. The next morning, I drove to downtown law offices I'd only visited once before when I'd proudly signed Sarah's law school graduation gift 8 years ago. But this time, I wasn't there to give something away. I was there to take something back. Attorney Margaret Chen was a small woman in her 50s who specialized in elder law and estate planning. Her office walls were covered with certificates and awards, but more importantly, they were covered with thank you photos from elderly clients who looked genuinely happy. Mrs. Patterson, she said after reviewing the documents I'd brought, you have several options here and all of them are completely legal. The transfer on death deed can be revoked with a simple form filing. But before we do anything, I want you to understand the full scope of what's happening. She spread out papers that Marcus had helped me compile: Sarah's financial situation, the assisted living deposit, the moving company arrangements, and most damning of all, the recorded phone conversation I'd made of Sarah discussing her plans with Derek the night before. Your daughter has made significant financial commitments based on the assumption that she'll have access to your property very soon, Attorney Chen said. If you revoke this deed, those plans collapse immediately. Good, I said firmly. Are you sure? This will likely destroy your relationship with Sarah permanently. I thought about the little girl who'd hugged me tight after skinning her knee, who'd thanked me tearfully when I'd worked overtime to buy her prom dress, who'd sobbed with joy when she'd passed the bar exam. Then I thought about the woman who'd called me a burden and planned my eviction while I slept down the hall. She destroyed our relationship when she decided I was worth more dead than alive, I said. Attorney Chen nodded and began preparing paperwork. There's something else you should consider. Given your daughter's financial desperation and her willingness to deceive creditors about your situation, you might want to take additional protective measures, such as sell the house yourself immediately, before she has any opportunity to claim adverse possession or file any kind of legal challenge. The idea hit me like lightning. How quickly could that happen? In today's market, with a property like yours, I could have 3 cash offers by next week. That's exactly what happened. By the following Friday, I had 4 cash offers ranging from $1.1 million to $1.3 million. I accepted the highest offer with a 30-day closing period. But I didn't tell Sarah and Derek about any of this. Let them continue their preparations for my forced relocation. Let them keep reassuring creditors that property money was coming. Let them believe they'd successfully manipulated a naive old woman. Meanwhile, I spent those 30 days making my own preparations. I found a beautiful 2-bedroom cottage 15 miles away, close enough to maintain my friendships and volunteer commitments, but far enough to feel like a completely fresh start. The cottage had a garden, a front porch with mountain views, and most importantly, it cost only $180,000, leaving me with over $1 million in cash. I also hired a moving company, a different one than Sarah had contacted. Professional movers who understood discretion and could work quickly when the time came. The closing was scheduled for a Tuesday. Sarah and Derek had planned to visit that weekend to finalize the assisted living transition, which meant they'd be arriving Saturday afternoon, expecting to find me packed and ready for their version of my future. Instead, they'd find something very different. On Friday afternoon, the movers arrived. By Sunday evening, the house was completely empty except for the envelope I left on the kitchen counter where Sarah would be sure to find it. Inside the envelope was a copy of the property sale documents, a copy of the revoked transfer on death deed, and a short note written in my careful handwriting. Sarah, you said I was a burden. You were right. I was burdening myself trying to love someone who saw me as an asset instead of a person. That burden has been lifted. The house sold for $1.3 million. After taxes and expenses, I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life without being anyone's burden ever again. I hope the assisted living facility will refund your deposit. Your mother, who is very much alive. I spent Tuesday morning in my new cottage, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture in rooms filled with sunlight and possibility. The cottage had belonged to an elderly woman whose family wanted a quick sale to settle her estate, ironic, considering how different her children were from mine. They'd wept when they handed me the keys, saying their mother would have loved knowing the house was going to someone who'd appreciate its gardens and its peaceful mountain views. Around noon, my old phone, the one I'd kept specifically for this moment, began ringing. Sarah's number appeared on the screen and I let it go to voicemail. Then Derek's number, then Sarah again. By 2 o'clock, I'd received 14 missed calls and 6 increasingly frantic voicemails. The first message was confusion. Mom, where are you? The house is empty. Call me back immediately. The second was anger. What the hell is going on? Did you move without telling us? This is insane. By the 6th message, desperation had crept into Sarah's voice. Mom, please call me back. I found your note. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Please. I'm begging you. I deleted them all without listening to the complete messages. I'd heard enough of Sarah's voice for one lifetime. That evening, she found me. I don't know how. Probably Marcus had mentioned the general area where I'd been looking for property, or maybe she'd hired her own investigator. I was watering my new garden when her Mercedes pulled into my driveway, traveling too fast and stopping too abruptly. She got out of the car looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt instead of her usual professional attire. This was Sarah in crisis mode, and I'd never seen her look more human or more broken. Mom, she said, hurrying across the lawn toward me. Thank God I found you. We need to talk about this house situation. There's been a terrible mistake. I continued watering my roses, new ones I'd bought to replace the ones I'd left behind. No mistake, Sarah. Everything happened exactly as I planned. You don't understand the financial implications of what you've done, she said, her lawyer voice trying to reassert itself. That house sale has created a massive tax burden. The capital gains alone will be enormous. You should have consulted with professionals before making such a major decision. I did consult with professionals. Attorney Margaret Chen handled the sale. Accountant David Morrison is managing the tax implications. Financial advisor Jennifer Walsh is investing the proceeds. I turned off the hose and faced her directly. I consulted with everyone except the daughter who called me a burden and planned to evict me from my own home. Sarah's composure cracked. I never said evict. That's not what I meant. You said if I refused to leave voluntarily, you could initiate eviction proceedings because you own the house. I heard you, Sarah. I heard everything. She stared at me in shock. You were listening to my phone calls? I was getting a glass of milk in my own kitchen when you decided to discuss my future loud enough for me to hear. Did you really think I was too stupid or too senile to understand what you were planning? Tears began streaming down her face. Mom, you don't understand how desperate we are. Derek's business failed. We're drowning in debt. The bank is foreclosing on our condo. We needed that house money to survive. You needed me to die, I corrected. Or at least disappear into assisted living so you could pretend I was dead to your creditors. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made of her conversation with Derek. Her voice filled the evening air, cold and calculating. She'll never know the difference between us genuinely caring about her safety and us needing her out of this house. Sarah listened to her own words with growing horror. When the recording ended, she collapsed onto my new porch steps, sobbing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know how it sounded, but I do love you. I've just been so scared, so overwhelmed. When you're facing bankruptcy, you start thinking about money instead of people, and I lost sight of what really matters. I sat down beside her, close enough to offer comfort but far enough to maintain my boundaries. Sarah, I worked 2 jobs for 20 years to pay for that house. I gave up vacations, new clothes, dinners out, everything so you could have stability. Then I gave you the house itself because I wanted you to succeed. I know, she sobbed. I know, and I threw it all away. You threw me away, I corrected gently. The house was just wood and brick. But you threw away your mother like I was something embarrassing from your past. We sat in silence as the sun set behind the mountains. Finally, Sarah looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Is there any way to fix this? Any way to earn your forgiveness? I considered her question carefully. Sarah, I'm 72 years old. I don't have decades left to spend waiting for you to remember that I'm your mother, not your burden. I've found peace in this cottage with neighbors who wave good morning and a garden that doesn't remind me of being pushed down front steps. So that's it. You're cutting me out of your life forever? I'm choosing my own life for the first time in 45 years. If there's room in that life for a daughter who respects me, we'll see, but there's no room for someone who sees me as a financial obstacle. Sarah nodded slowly and stood to leave. At her car, she turned back one more time. I hope someday you can forgive me. I already have, I said. That's why I was able to let go. As her taillights disappeared down the mountain road, I looked up at stars brighter than any I'd ever seen from my old neighborhood. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in a house that was truly mine, with money that was truly mine, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. At 72, I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being used. And I'd learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is teaching them what they've lost. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Your support means everything to us and helps us bring you more stories of courage, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right. Tell us in the comments below, what would you have done in Margaret's situation?